Nobody here but Donna Creef.
I thought you guys had canceled me because they were your party.
All right, I am going to try this disorderly group again. I'd like to call this meeting to order. I need a motion to adopt the agenda.
Madam Chair, were you going to amend the agenda?
I am going to amend the agenda. I would like to add an item, and that is the election of a vice chair, which we should have had, I believe.
I'll second that motion.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Would anyone like to propose someone to become the vice chair?
I propose that Mr. Scarborough be the vice chair.
I propose that Hal be the chair.
It's called passing the buck.
I'll second Hal.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? Hal is the vice chair. Congratulations, Hal. It feels like old times again, doesn't it? Okay. Now I need a motion to adopt the agenda.
Make a motion, we adopt the agenda.
I'll second it.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Okay, the agenda is adopted. Now I need an approval of the minutes. A motion for the approval of the minutes.
I'll move that we approve the minutes of the March 8th, 2022 meeting.
Perfect.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? All right, the motion passes. Next, we have public comment. Members of the public are invited to address the planning board. Public comment is not intended to require the board to answer any impromptu questions or take any action on items brought up during the public comment period. Speakers will address comments to the board as a whole and not one member. Discussions between speakers and members of the audience will not be allowed. Time limits are 3 minutes per person or 5 minutes per group. Please identify yourself so your statements can be recorded. I apologize for eating a mint right before I started. I was not being very thoughtful. Public comment? None.
Not a lot of public here.
No, I know. You can always be hopeful. Okay, next we have review and approval of Old Tom LLC lighting and landscape plans. Melissa, would you like to share
Sure.
the staff report?
So the Board of Commissioners at their last meeting voted to approve the special use permit for Old Tom LLC to build a mixed-use building with a hotel on the first floor and apartments on the second and third floor, where the location of the existing Evans building is. Two conditions of that special use permit were that you all approve the lighting and the landscaping plans. So I have reviewed these plans. Oh, that's really big. Let's see. So this is first the lighting plan. Our basic standard is that everything needs to be under 4-foot candles, but this is really hard. It's not really responding to
Looks
me.
like there's a lot of zeros on there.
Yeah, I mean, so it is in compliance with the ordinance. And then the next page, which will probably be wonky too, is the site plan and landscape plan. Ms. Donna Creef has represented the applicant in the matter. During the application process, she's here if y'all have questions. And my recommendation is approval.
Do we approve or recommend approval to the Board of Commissioners?
No, so the condition on the special use permit is that these plans come to you all for approval. And it's pretty standard because you all approve parking lot buffers, lighting plans. You all have that authority in the ordinance. as the planning board. And often when the special use permit applications come to us and go through the process, often the applicant is not yet to a point where they have this detail. It just so happens that they provided us this detail prior to the meeting, but you all didn't see this at your last meeting. So that's why we did it this way, and we suggested it as a condition of their special use permit.
I have one question. I know that the building that's being constructed, when the Evans building comes down, is the one that says proposed. But it looks like that they also added a buffer between the Evans, the property that is the Evans home, and the apartment building next door. So they own both properties and they just,
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. They don't own the house, but Mr. Evans' house.
right,
But when I was discussing this with the applicant, even though it's not a requirement, because it's really a redevelopment instead of new construction,
Right.
if you will, except for the one building, I suggested that it was just the appropriate thing to do to make that prettier there. And so I think it will be an overall aesthetic for the residential use as well as for the redevelopment of the site. So they put in the buffer there and they put in some more plants here. They're gonna beef up what's there at the back of the site, if you will, on Fernando Street there. There's some trees there now, but they're not really an effective buffer,
No.
if you will.
And
then-
I'm sorry, what's interesting, there is this piece of property that is here that, according to GIS, it conveys to the town, and that's some weird,
I've looked at it on the aerials and I couldn't figure it out either, yeah, so.
so I would imagine that if the applicant had all of that property, the buffer would probably be even more improved, but that's actually town-owned property. So there was that weird thing, well, I've been looking at these site plans that I just wanted to note for you all, that the property line doesn't go all the way to the street.
and they have bike racks in the back too.
Right, yes. So we are trying to make it pretty, if you will, and make it, nicer than what's out there, although there is some vegetation out there now.
Thank you. My only question was about the lights, whether they were the correct candle
Mhm.
hour, and when I saw the shrubs, they looked nice. Does anyone else have a question?
No, I'll move that we approve it as submitted.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. The motion is approved.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Much easier than the last time.
Do you know when they're gonna start?
Well, we still have to get the plans finalized, and, everybody's so busy, it's like pulling IT to get something done, so I was glad to get the landscaping and the lighting plan, but no, I don't know, we're, sometime out, but we're trying to get there, hopefully sooner than later.
Yeah.
Okay, guys, thank you so much.
Thank you.
You.
Okay, it doesn't seem possible, but we have come to board member comments. Dave, it looks like you have notes, so I'm going to start with you.
Oh, well, most of them have already been answered. So, although, Sherry talked to me, and she said that the mayor wanted her to be on a transportation committee. You know anything about this?
Yes.
And I think that if they're gonna have a transportation committee, that somebody from this planning board should be on it also.
So, well, the mayor, in a meeting, it's maybe been 3 meetings ago, mentioned in the open session that Sherry had an interest. I followed up with Sherry. What Sherry is interested in doing is serving as the town's appointed official to the Albemarle Regional Planning Organization's Transportation Committee, so it's a regional transportation committee. They set the priorities for North Carolina Department of Transportation funding. So there's some history with that. I have on and off served, so there are 2 boards. There's one the APRO, and that's the government staff. And then there's the RTCC, which are the elected officials. So when I first started working for the town, I was the town's liaison to the APRO. And Kermit was the town manager at the time. He delegated that authority to me. When James came, I offered it back to the town manager, and I don't know how active or not James was with the APRO, but now, since my appointment began as interim, I've been back attending those meetings. Our appointed official to the RTCC is currently Commissioner Collins, and I understand that Commissioner Wickstrom and Commissioner Collins are going to have a discussion, if they haven't already, about that. So it is not necessarily, and I've explained it to the mayor as I have worked through this, and the meeting is actually next Wednesday, they meet quarterly, so the next quarterly meeting is next Wednesday, and I have invited Commissioner Wickstrom to come attend with me via Zoom. So she'll start to get plugged in, even though she's not our elected official on the board, she can at least observe.
Oh, that's good.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. All right, Hal, do you have anything?
Yeah, I was just surprised at the modifications that came back on the Saga plan, and, you know, it's a pretty gigantic increase in density and everything, and I think when we go through and approve it this time, we need to go ahead and demand that a transportation study be done prior to approval.
I agree with you.
Well, that was on my comments too, but I figured since they weren't here tonight, yeah, definitely a transportation.
And I would note, to that point, I'm not sure the level to which each of you have had an opportunity to review that plan, but what they did, I've thought a lot about it, and I've thought, well, they increased the amount of dwelling units, so obviously parking would have to increase, and what they did in order to compensate for that was that they made the restaurant smaller in seats. But what's interesting is that the footprint didn't change.
So, yeah, how do you fit those
And
additional
how do you
parking
monitor how
places
many
in
seats
there?
are in the
Yeah.
restaurant? And so it could be it's something for us to consider.
Well, the potential with 44 dwelling units now, there's the potential for at least 88 cars if you have, you know, and all those people trying to get out on the road in the morning and everything. It's just, you know, a disaster waiting to
It falls
happen.
under our worst nightmare.
Yeah.
And along that line, I still, and somebody will have to explain this so real easy to me, but our policy says, or the zone says, maximum is 6 units per acre. So, I mean, I'm not sure how they can get over that.
That inclusionary ordinance. So
By
That
by
is the-
affordable units,
yes.
adding those affordable units, that's what he did. He's making them all affordable units
Yeah.
now.
What do they call affordable?
Yeah.
Well, so
Well,
that was to Nicole,
Go
to
ahead.
Chair Northrup's point. So when she was reviewing it along with the ordinance, she asked, you know, what their inclusionary plan was. And I went through the site plans. It wasn't provided on the site plans. I made an assumption that it would be there. So when I didn't have that on Friday, that's when I sent the email to them, letting them know that their application was incomplete, and I sent them a form that they can fill out that will further inform us.
Now, will they be for rent or for sale? I know
Mr.
that-
Gupta has explained both scenarios to me, but the fact that there is an intention to sell any of them makes them a covered development, which then falls under the inclusionary ordinance. In the case of Old Tom, that ordinance does not apply because they are renting those units.
Is there a requirement as to how much of a percentage has to be for sale versus for rent, or can he just sell one and rent the rest of them? and get the benefit.
I don't think that the ordinance is that prescriptive. And again, this is an opportunity.
Yes.
That it also, and this may be something to consider when you are considering this, is that it even mentions, you know, a 501c3 that we don't currently have a relationship with to vet the applications. So in my time with the town, when I started working for the town, there was only one affordable house lot unit available left in the entire town. It's my understanding that the town used to have a relationship with the now former Outer Banks Community Development Foundation, and they would vet those applications. And so that is a piece that we are going to have to consider as to who vets those applications, because that includes people's personal financial information.
Oh, yeah.
That we don't necessarily have the IT infrastructure to,
Securely look at that.
that's right. So that is also,
Because my concern is if they're not for sale, I mean, that's what the affordable housing thing was all about, was selling those units.
Yes.
But, you know, they'll just sell one or two and then just jam a bunch of renters in there.
and to the chair's point, that's why it's important to see what their plan is for each of the units in the development, and that's what we don't have. And so I think it was worthwhile, even though probably disappointed the applicant.
That's the way it goes sometimes.
Jamie?
Yeah, I was gonna say, continuing on I have the same thought as everybody else, I'll continue with that. Nicole and I worked out the math as best we could with our math skills on the ordinance, and it's for sale, so there's not a provision I could find in the ordinance for rent. There is, so it would have to be for sale, and then it's supposed to be administered by someone, so there's some problems there with it not quite being the ordinance. There's also, like Dave said, there is the, it says right there in B3, a limit of 6 units per acre.
Yeah.
So then there's the inclusionary zoning. Well,
Just
can't
separate.
believe that, you know, if you want to say, you know, well, of course, the town attorney, he'll argue, it says what it says, and that's what he can argue in court. But I can't believe that we want to cap it at 6 unless you have inclusionary, then we're going to let you jump it up to 11. That just seems extreme. The way I remember it is, because if you take back in the lot coverage, then you're allowed, it's like 7.25 units per acre. So that's what, I remember it was 6, you could get 7 out of 6. But they don't have lot cover, they don't have individual home sites, so they're ignoring that part of the ordinance. So again, it's just like pieces of the ordinance cut up to make what they want
It's
to do.
kind of like whatever works for them.
Yeah,
That's-
which I understand, I mean, that's what they do, they're like, you know, they've got a product to sell, and they're trying to do it the best they can, you know? Everybody in business tries to sell for whatever they got for as much as they can. But for us, I think what we need to do is instead of arguing what it says, or what it's supposed to say, or what we meant 15 years ago when we wrote it, is what do we want it to say, and how do we want it to be, and just get that language in there as soon as possible.
And who is going to monitor
Yeah, those types of things,
the
you know?
development once it's built, to make sure that
Inclusionary
it...
zoning, is
yeah.
that appropriate for the B3 district? You know, maybe it's not, maybe it should just not apply, maybe it should. That's just things we need to decide instead of having this weird, you know, this document that we're like forced to uphold. It's up to us to be the stewards of that and change it as we see, or recommend changes to the Board of Commissioners as we see fit. So maybe that needs some work, and that's kind of what we were talking about today with this new land use plan, deciding what we want, and then making the language so it says it, so we're not arguing over how it could be interpreted.
What got me about this submittal is, you know, when we sent it back last time, they were gonna make some adjustments and changes that we recommended, and then all of a sudden it comes back and it's a major revision, just jamming even more density in there. and trying to just slide it on through.
Fields, do you have anything to add?
Maybe get them to get the airboats to go by there.
But that'll disturb the people that live in the adjoining development, because they gotta go up that canal to get there.
I just have, I'm going to end on, and Jamie, were you done?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. I'm going to end on a positive note. The members I was working with earlier know this, but my the push-button crosswalk on Ananias Dare was installed yesterday. So pedestrians can safely cross from the west side to the east side, which is really what we want. We want more of those, so that.
Did they put your name on the
See the-
little button?
I was gonna
The
say-
power you have.
Little plaque on there, the Cole
Now
Northrop
you
push
can
button?
everybody's button.
On that note, would anyone like to make a motion to adjourn this meeting?
I'll move that we adjourn.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. This meeting is adjourned.
I'm sorry.